All right, well, let's check out what's happening and making headlines in our newspapers this morning. But joining me is Business Day News editor, Sashni Pather. Sashni, good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. Let's take a look at what's happening, first of all, in the Cape Times. The former President Jacob Zuma, they're still leading headlines. I remain a victim. Now, that is, of course, the headline ahead of his court case arguments and hearing at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We know that, well, according to him, he says he remains a victim of a constitutional dictatorship and has vowed to continue fighting on. Your perspective on this?
Morning to me and hello to the viewers. I think we can see this as another salvo from the Zuma camp. It was a statement issued by his foundation, and it's actually the first time that he's come out to speak publicly, after he was sentenced for contempt of court for defying a Concord order. He's basically saying that South Africa has turned from a constitutional democracy into a constitutional dictatorship. He mentions several reasons behind this thinking, and he's also saying that he's questioning the Concord processes, saying it was flawed, also saying that he was asked to mitigate in sentencing, even though he hasn't been actually sentenced. But you will remember to me that he was actually sentenced for contempt of court, and that is why he spent more than 60 days. He has been since paroled, but yeah, he did have his stint in jail.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be hearing, of course, from those arguments come 10 a.m. Sashni. Of course, the former president's legal reps there arguing that his privacy was invaded. This after they alleged, of course, Billy Downer leaked the medical certificate, his medical roll certificate. But let's move on to the Citizen newspaper now and see what they're leading with. Voters set to snub poll, Sashni, that's the headline. With the voters' roll, 650,000 people lighter than its 2019, according to an election analyst. Millions who are eligible to vote not having registered. A dismal turnout for upcoming local government elections looks likely. I mean, what do you make especially of these numbers? Was it expected that we won't be seeing a lot of people rushing to the voting stations to register to vote?
I think it was a long time coming. I mean, if you look to me at the campaigning, I think parties started late. The DA started in Durban a few weeks ago. You'd be hard-pressed to see any ANC campaign posters on the lamp post as they usually do. And also, I think in COVID times, I think people are just, there's been a lot of corruption associated with government. There's a lot of voter apathy. If you look at the numbers, and we mentioned it in Business Day this morning, in 2016, there were 3 million people that registered to vote for that local government elections. Fast forward to 2021, and you have just over half of that number, 1.7 million that have registered. So it really speaks to a lagging of people not wanting to maybe cast their votes. And, it shows in the numbers.
It does indeed, and I suppose this is why this part of the reason why we're seeing those numbers dwindling down. The Herald leading here, and I'm not sure, Sashni, if you've seen this picture of this school that's on the verge, literally, of a collapse, and that's the headline. Our school could collapse anytime. Broken windows, broken doors. You could literally see the infrastructure here dilapidated at this point, and teachers, including parents, quite fed up with years of empty promises. But that's exactly what even some of the Soweto residents were saying. Every 5 years, they see politicians coming into their community, making these empty promises just to garner some votes and then disappear again. And it seems that picture we're seeing for the front page of the Herald is a reflection of what this community is seeing at the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro.
And, to me, you pick on something that's quite important that the president mentioned yesterday. It was the 4-day COSATU conference, and he addressed the conference saying the communities that he's spoken to, when it comes to election time, they're so energetic, and that's the only time that you'll see them. And it speaks to what we're talking about, when problems need to be addressed on the ground, you don't see them before election time. And people have all of these complaints saying, and also that speaks to the voter apathy that we were speaking about earlier.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what they need to consider at this time, just by reflection of those that turnout number that we saw from the IEC with the voter turnout. But Sashni, with that being said, what are you following as Business Day today? What can we expect?
Okay, so our front page lead story is, back to the IEC process and how it's kind of been mired in controversy even before the elections on the 1st of November. So you'll recall to me that yesterday the Concourt said that the IEC reopening the candidate list was lawful, it was constitutional, there was nothing illegal about it. But the opposition parties, the DA in particular, is saying that reopening this candidate list is actually favoring the ANC. Now, if the ANC had not gotten in their list, it's about they would have missed out on 35 municipalities. And that's a huge number to me. And it's going to be a watershed election. And it's not municipalities that they can afford to just forget about.
Yeah.
And it would have included metros such as Tshwane, Cape Town, and Mangaung. So that's quite a big constituency that would have gone by the wayside had this not happened. And that is kind of, what the DA is contending. And they've also been joined by other political parties like the IFP, who are questioning this process. The DA says this is not the end of the road for them. They will contest, and they will be keeping a firm eye on the IEC to see how the polls actually progress. They won't boycott it because they say that will work in favor of the ANC, so they will participate. But again, it's almost a warning that they've given to the IEC that, we are watching you.
Yeah, indeed. And John Steenhuisen there from the DA further saying, even in that briefing just yesterday, that the voter registration weekend showing cracks in the body, in the electoral body, that is the IEC. But I know there's another story that you would like us to take note of from the Business Day, Sashni.
Yes, so it's the ball's back in ICASA's court. ICASA is the regulatory body that is meant to be rolling out the radio frequency, the spectrum auction, as you know, to me. And it's been a process that's been quite stagnant. It hasn't gotten off the ground as quickly as people would like to see it. And the pushes come from business, not just business, but it means that you'll have data that's cheaper. And you'll remember to me that we had the data must fall protests years ago, and most recently, I think maybe about 5 years ago, where people were demanding because it's not accessible. So apart from the economic positives that opening up the spectrum could mean, it's also just cheaper data for South Africans. And they're back to the drawing board. ICASA is back to the drawing board because Telkom is saying that the rules and the recommendations that ICASA have made will actually favor MTN and Vodacom. So that's their bone of contention. But the IEC is now in a predicament where they could miss their own January deadline and have public hearings, which would further push this process, which means just more delays.
Yeah, indeed. That's a story that we definitely need to take a look at, and also you can find it in detail on the Business Day. Also, I see page 9 there was with Busi Mavuso saying ICASA's calling COVID-19 spectrum quite a shock. So it should be interesting on page 9 of the Business Day. But thank you so much. Business Day editor Sashni Pather, a pleasure talking to you always.